Hi, I'm Jack Tarbox, and I made a documentary in high school all about comedy and the analysis of it. It helped me get into college and where I am today, and I hate it very much.
Listen, comedy is when someone says something that someone laughs at. That's it. One single person has to like it, and you did a good job. And many people argue that. It's been going on since the day time began. Picture like a dinosaur roaring some weird way, right? And some little melatonin is added to another dinosaur's brain, just a little extra, because they enjoyed it that much. That's still Comedy the Dinosaur.
This was my first foray into the world of documentary, an analysis of comedy as a genre, an easy topic. With a script that consisted of chicken scratch notes me and my friends came up with, and a cold coursing through my head, it was made.
And that's what comedy is. I mean, how many times can I say that? Comedy is whatever you want it to be. It's hard to define it because it's everything.
Comedy is anything you want it to be, seems to be the idea I'm getting at here, and it follows through for the whole documentary. And I say it multiple times. However, I don't know if that's still true to me. I made this documentary senior year of high school, and while I believe I was still funny to some extent back then, I don't think I knew what comedy meant to me yet. At this point, I had never written a script. I had never really sat down to try and understand what I thought was funny. Sure, I knew how to make my friends and myself laugh, but I don't know if I knew how much power comedy would come to have over my life in the few years. Comedy to me at this point in my life is a craft. Calling it anything you want it to be is kind of a major disservice to the comedians who spent years sculpting their jokes and their acts. While I do believe humor can and does come from anywhere, it's the channeling and understanding of that becomes comedy. Whereas humor is unrefined and raw like energy, comedy is polished and purposeful. It has meaning and intention. And I feel like an understanding of that intention is kind of what I was lacking here with this documentary. And it's these few years that have given me that insight and helped me understand that to a better extent.
It means people study comedy until the day they die. They need to know what it is. But when it comes down to it, comedy is whatever you want it to be, as long as you find it funny. That's why nobody can figure it out.
I say in this documentary that no one can figure comedy out, and it's there that I wish I'd focused. While the rest of this documentary seems to be wild and barely structured, I find this to be an interesting idea because it's true. And yet, how can it be true if we have millions of unbelievable comedians in this world? Certainly, it isn't just luck. No, we know it's hard work. But how does one become a great comedian if no one can really figure comedy out as a whole? Do we just break comedy off into pieces and plant our flag in our own little definable crumb and proclaim ourselves as king? It might be that. Comedy is so wide and varied in scope and ideals that I feel like not even the best comedians know what comedy is. Sure, they know how to craft it and they know how to form it, but there's no finite entity or definition that encompasses all of comedy. And that's because the moment we think we know what comedy is, our ideas get flipped on our heads the moment something new happens. And there's always a constant evolution in comedy. The moment something gets stagnant, people need to find what's next, or else we'll go off into nothing. I'm starting to fear now that me trying to analyze comedy again with my new headspace just has me falling into the same holes that I did back then. The moment I have a thought, I have a million different thoughts, and it's difficult to get them straight in my head, especially when I want to talk about them. Comedy is so important to me that it's difficult to talk about, and I feel like I just do an injustice when I try. This documentary was very important to me when I made it, and it still holds a pretty important role in my life now, though to different extents and different means. My friends and I went through a ton of ideas on how to tackle it. At one point, we wanted to make a timeline, a crash course survey of comedy from where we thought it really started significance in our lives onward, but it didn't really work out. The thing is, you can still see remnants of that idea in the final documentary. Remnants? You can still see a remnants. Is remnants plural? It's fine.
The comedy that we're focusing on, starts around the 70s.
My favorite comedian, that is incredibly hard because I've grown up in some of the best comedy, or around some of the best comedy on the planet. All-time favorite comedian? As a teenager, I listened to Adam Sandler CDs. Now I love Louis C.K. And other wildly inappropriate comedians that teenagers should not listen to at all, ever.
It makes no sense in the context of the clip or the documentary as a whole why I would bring up the 70s then. We never go into that. We just go into an interview with a teacher of mine. The documentary has kind of haunted me for a while now. This is one of the projects I had submitted in my portfolio when I was trying to apply to colleges, and at one point, I got an email back from a college head saying that he thought it was ambitious and that he liked it. I'd already hated it by then, and seeing that just confused me. Maybe it was a right path, but just the wrong guidance. We needed more of a reformed idea, and more of an understanding on how to make a documentary in general. I made another documentary a year later in college, my freshman year, and I also hate that one deeply. I wonder if I'll hate this one too, given time. But these documentaries scared me away from the genre in a way. I've always loved watching and learning about documentaries and all the discussion around them, but ever since this project we entitled Comedy Documentary, I've never felt good about making them ever again. Making this documentary has been very hard to do. This one. I was trying to think of different ideas, and there was tons that I could think of that I thought I would really enjoy or would be really cool to see on film, and something that I thought I could bring my voice to. But comedy documentary was always nagging in the back of my head. And it really held me back for a long time. I had no faith in myself to be able to create these docs that I wanted to because of my previous failures. I felt that if I tried, it would just be another embarrassment, like this comedy documentary was to me for so long. In my head, I knew I had to confront this documentary in order to be able to go past it. And that's where I got the idea for this one. And I wanted to analyze what I thought. I wanted to take the comedy, or my idea of comedy, and kind of pit it against what I thought now. But being face to face with this documentary again after a few years of not watching it has been interesting. Because I think I have some interesting ideas in there, but it still just scares me. There's a moment in this documentary where I talk about how comedy has pushed us forward as a people. And without any elegance or craft of words, I say this.
One thing people fail to realize quite often is that comedy isn't just about making people laugh. Throughout time, it's been about changing views and changing the world, really. And it's good at that because it uses the Huxleyan dystopia kind of view on things. Don't change the world by attacking it full front. Change the world by slowly turning little things in people's minds and making it seem like it's a good thing. And in reality, it is a good thing that we became less racist because of the Cosby Show and the Jeffersons, and we could understand our emotions through all these sitcoms that showed us it's okay to be the way we are.
In a very heavy-handed manner, I talk about how comedy has made us less racist as a people. The Cosby Show example not being one that has aged well, though I think the show has. And I don't know. I find that interesting because I do think it's right. I think I could have phrased it better, and if I had a script written out, I would have been able to describe what I meant more. But I do think comedy opens us up in a way that no other genre can do, to acceptance especially. I think a lot of progress being made in the social political climate can be made through comedy because it's an equalizer. Where I don't think comedy needs to always be nice. I think even mean comedy, even comedy pointed at people, pointed at specific people, can be good. As long as it's always a joke. And that's what I think comedy should always stick to being, is a joke. It's not taken seriously, but serious things can come out of it. It holds a power and a weight that I don't think anything else does. People really take comedy to heart. Now I wonder why that is. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. And in the same vein, I wonder why I took this documentary so much to heart. No one else really saw it besides my high school class and some professors that had to review my submissions for their school. And yet it feels like this dark cloud over me for so long that everyone can see. This documentary now that I'm making has been procrastinated for so long, and so many ideas that came and went and failed, all because of my fear of making documentaries, because I failed once or twice. And in all honesty, while the documentary isn't great, it holds a weight greater than what it should over me. And so I hope that by making this documentary now, that weight kind of breaks away. But maybe I'm just explaining myself, trying to come up with an excuse. Like, I'm not bad anymore. Now I've learned what comedy is to me. But that's going to change in a few years, too. Is this even a documentary? At some point, when it's just me talking into a camera, not a documentary in a YouTube video? I think the fancy mic makes it a documentary, but I'm not sure. I think the camera pointed at my face makes it a documentary, but I'm not sure either. I'm in a recording studio. Does that make it a documentary? Or am I still just too scared to go out and try to make a real documentary? Am I still just too scared of the genre?